Oh, hello. Streaming again. Oh, so yeah, welcome back to the 360 live streams. This is number two. We're taking a shift from doing like general VP stuff to doing 360 tips in this Thursday session. So every Thursday we're going to go through new kind of interesting things, interesting techniques for making your 360 renders a lot better. Because we're just really excited about this new movie render queue, ultra high res 360 rendering system that we've got. So we just want to give it a lot of attention and try and help you get the best renders you can with 360. So last week we went through a bit of a regular overall kind of rundown of what the camera can do and how you can get incredibly high-res renders through Movie Render Queue for our new Movie Render Queue system. And then we just want to jump into interesting tips, interesting discussions around getting the best 360 renders. I thought this one could be quite a cool first one to do, because we're gonna look at water and reflections and how you can use a kind of depth mask to solve some issues that come up with reflections in water. Just I'd note that you can get access to this new update to the Movie Render Queue version of the ultra high res 360 renders. You can get early access to this, and I'll put the link for that in the description. If you got an email from us recently, if you're on our mailing list, we sent a link for applying to this community version where you can kind of beta test what we're working on. I think it's really important to have this stuff out, getting feedback, and all that good stuff. You know how we do it. So let's check out this method. I'll show you sort of the problem first, and then I'll show you the method. So I should have a material on here. Alright, it's in the water material. So let me just kind of deactivate this first. Let's be how to do it. Cool. This is kind of what water looks like right off the bat. Got this as well. So you probably saw the difference there when I took those values of the material off. It's essentially sort of masking off the ripples when you're closer to your kind of camera or your actor. So I'm going to show you like how you might redo that, but first I'll just show you the problem that is kind of mitigating. If we jump into the render target for this 360 camera, I'm going to unpause the rendering. Cool. Now we can kind of preview this render target. I'll keep this over here. Pilot the camera. Keep this here so we can see nice and clearly what's going on. So you might quite often have a sort of, see if I can get some higher resolution on this. Cool. So you might quite often have like a watery kind of scene. You might have some objects that you want to kind of move towards in your shot. If you look really closely down here, this is where we might start to see the problems. Okay, so that's actually done really well at that kind of angle, but you can see what I'm talking about here if you look really closely. There's kind of like a harsh cutoff in the shadow here. See if I can get a different angle that might show it off a bit more. What about if we make this bigger? I've just been trying to like take on any situation that people might want to use and spot these problems early on. But there, you can really see it now. Total harsh cutoff here, where the kind of object that's reflecting is visible. And the reason for this is the kind of, as I sort of said in the last session, a lot of these problems come down to the same key thing, is that to make a 360 render, you have to stitch 6 faces together. And what you can probably guess from this is that it's the bottom face that's causing this problem. And it's kind of because the bottom face, turn it off here, you can see that the, where am I going to put this? Ooh. See that the bottom face perfectly matches up with where the line is there, where the visible seam is. I think sort of in a broad sense, the reason that this is happening is because your bottom face on your camera is going to be looking directly down like this. So, even if you're looking directly down and you're right next to this guy, it's not going to be visible. So it kind of makes sense that this bottom face won't see any reflection. I'm sure there's some insane programming that you could do, some insane, I don't even know if there is anything that you could do to solve that for 360. So this is just the nature of 360, and this is just a problem that's, just really tricky. So we have to do things in our scene to our materials to kind of mitigate this. Interestingly, if you kind of angle your shot downwards, you are going to see more of the reflection. And you could render this out, and then you could use something like Premiere to use their 360 editing tools to actually correct this back to being straight. I'm pretty sure you could do that. I haven't done this all the way through, but that's like a shot for shot kind of potential fix. But I think really what you want to do is jump into the actual water material. I wonder if I could just up the light source a bit. I wonder if this would show this a bit, show this off a bit more. Yeah, so it's not as nice of an image to look at, but you can see for kind of debugging, this is probably more useful. Hopefully you can see this. So yeah, like jumping into the material is quite a good next step if you're having an issue like this. There could be things that you could do with making the water more cloudy, or changing the kind of waves or something like that. See if I can keep this visible. Doing all kinds of gymnastics to show you this on one screen. So I'm actually just going to go through some things that I haven't even checked yet before we go through the main kind of lesson. I might bookmark the point where I show you the full fix that I found. But there could be kind of material edits you can make. I wonder if there's a way to make the material the water more cloudy, more color. It's not going to make an effect to that, is it? So there's not really much in here for making the water more cloudy. I managed to grab this other material from a pack called Rural Australia. And the Rural Australia map has some really nicely baked lighting and some really good settings for getting pretty good 360 renders. It's actually still not perfect. It still doesn't fully fix this issue that we have here. Because again, like I say, it's like it's quite an unavoidable issue. So mate, this water's really, really murky. Getting some really murky water could be a potential fix. Obviously, these settings are really weird. Let's check out this material instance instead. Got roughness. Normals. Refraction. Interesting. So again, there's not loads here for like making it more or less clear, the water, which is weird. I thought there was, but that's all right. So you might get a bit stuck like this with how to actually like fix something like this. What I found is you kind of want to make a bit of a depth fade. So I followed this guy's tutorial on making material that kind of changes color as you're closer and further away. And then I took an element from that and added it to the reflection, whether it's to make it into a depth-based blend of whether it's reflecting or not. So it actually still gives quite a natural effect, something that you might see when you are on top of water anyway. You might see less reflection going on right below you. So let's move this to a point where it might be problematic. So there we got visible seam there. Cool. And then, yeah, these are the parameters. I've done it for reflection distance, and I've done it for the waves as well, because the waves can sometimes cause seams, because you'll get a bit of a wave here bouncing off and like hitting this, and causing like these kind of similar kind of little straight, jagged kind of lines. So I'll show you how to do it for the reflection first. I'll show you what it does first. So max distance will be the furthest fade out point. This is in centimeters, so maybe 300. And the offset is sort of the amount that is going to fade up to that point. Cool. So you can see it's almost totally faded out now, so that's, you know, kind of not ideal. But, you know, you can kind of dial in these values for your own purposes, your own shots. And there you got quite a clear example of where this gradient is happening. We kind of come away and like we'll move around, look up. You can see what's going on here, you know, as you get closer, it's kind of fading. But again, it's not the most unnatural kind of look. I feel like this might reflect nature quite well. So what this does is, you know, instead of having this really harsh line, maybe if we dial it in, something like that, so it's a little bit closer to where you are. Yeah, it's only 38 centimeters away. There you can see you just get no jagged line for that particular shot. We're looking right down here. Instead of a super jagged line, it's going to be just a nice fade out. So for me, that's the kind of best solution for this that I found at the moment, and I think it is pretty damn good. Obviously, you know, as you come down, if you want a different shot where you're right by the water, you might need to then change this material, change the parameters, because that's not going to look so good. So I'm guessing if we were to like bring this a bit closer, or something like that, that would be more like it for this shot. So it's not going to work shot to shot. You know, it's not going to work for everything. You got to dial in the values. And then I've also done this for the waves, because the waves, I don't know if I can show an example of this, because I've actually not been able to make it do like do this problem again. But you can do this for, you know, any property of the material if you sort of find the right place to put this little kind of material function. So let's do it for the waves as well. Got max distance set to like around the same values. See if we can dial it to show what's going on. You can see the waves getting kind of smoother as you up this. And there they're totally gone. And there we can see we can't create a really harsh line. Doing something like kind of near equal values. So again, this is just doing the same thing but for the waves. And yeah, you can do this for any property if you find out where you can hook this in. So I'll jump into the material and just show you where this is doing its thing, how it's doing its thing. And I'll just pause the rendering on the 360 cam. Save me a bit of resources. But this does happen in viewport as well because it's a material property. It's a material property based on where your camera is. So it's quite nice. It will work for any camera, work for viewport. Obviously, you're not going to get the seams in the viewport anyway, but you can see the effect of the kind of fading out of the reflection. Yeah, so let's jump into it. So I had to go into the material. As I say, this was this wasn't the Royal Australian material, but this was a just standard asset, engine asset. So I just copied the master material, made an instance, but in the master, it was just this. So it's just a function. So I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to go deeper. We go into the material function. And yes, we got a specular input here. So the specular is what we want to be messing with. So if I bring up the I won't bring up the standard material, but basically this was just going into the specular here. So I was like, I need to tap in somewhere here. So as I say, I borrowed the kind of depth-based trick from another tutorial, but we're taking the absolute world position, and we're taking the camera position. Oh. And then what we're doing, we're creating these offset values. We're creating the max distance. And we're creating the offset value. And then this was basically what he gave me for the depth fade. He was doing it with two colors. Because this is going into the alpha channel of alert. So if this was two colors, I wonder if I can demonstrate this. I guess because it's going into the specular, it might be quite weird. Let's see, might as well give it a go. If we do this, put it into base color instead. Let's see what happens. Preparing it. Let's see. It looks like it's going to do what we're expecting. So we've got this kind of blue and pink. So if we bring this in. Is that right? Or do we bring it out a bit? Yeah, there we go. So this is kind of visualizing what we're doing. We can make this broader, make it fade more, playing with these values. Yeah, that's visualizing what we're doing here. Obviously, I've just hooked it up with color. Instead of color, we're going to hook it into the specular. So back in the material function for the water, let's delete these. All we want is the original specular. Oh no, where did I put the base color? Oh god. I actually can't. Oh, it's just up there. Cool. Right. As I say, when I jumped into this, specular was just in here. So we want that original specular going in here. And then we want the other value to be 1, which is just going to be black. 0. This can be 0, isn't it? So 0 specular, or this amount of specular is what we're lerping between. And then the lerp is the kind of pink and blue visualizer that we had. But it's lerping the amount of the specular. Cool. So that is going to do that exact same thing, but for whether it's close or far away, it's going to be more or less shiny. So that went into this material function. So what I did was made a copy of the original material function, made my changes, because this is all engine content, I didn't really want to change it. Made my changes in the copy of it and hooked that up. Then you hook this up into the material water. Again, this is a copy, just to not change any engine content that's already there. And yeah, that's how I made the specular, basically. So just combining that depth-based depth-based fade, and just hooking it into the specular. To do it for the ripples was a little bit more tricky. It wasn't too much harder, but I just had to go into another material function. So I was trying to find where the ripples were. We got normals. So, you know, waves are usually done with normals because it's showing a kind of faking a kind of bumpy surface by showing the waves. So to remove the waves, I was like, oh, we probably want to remove the normals. So again, all the normals stuff was inside this material function. Can I double click it? I'll go in here. That's probably opening here. And I was like, oh, nice, we got normal strength. And I actually don't think I've added it here. Oh yeah, that's because I went into the previous one. But yeah, normal strength. So it was going to be something like that. Let's see where I actually did put it. So I made a copy of the same material function, just so I'm not changing any engine content. And let's compare these. So normals 1 was looking like this. My edit to it was looking like this. Again, I was just using a lerp to lerp between the original value that we had here, normal strength, and I just copied the wave strength up to all this. Just copied these 3, put them up here, but I made the wave strength 0. So we're lerping between wave strength 1 and wave strength 0. And again, just the thing that's driving that lerp is the same little kind of, again, this could be a material function. Same little material function that was controlling the specular. And that's just going into the alpha here. So it's like some pretty, jumping into some quite complex materials, but really not doing too much to edit them. And then just taking that same depth fade that someone else quite cleverly put together. So I would love to show this in some more examples. I've just got this water one for now, but I think with sort of puddles and things like that, it could also have some really good results. I think just getting this quite natural fade, it's not really taking anything away from the image, and at the same time, it's gonna really stop kind of distractions through having these visible seams. I can imagine a sort of city scene or something might be really quite distracting if you've got a lot of jagged edges in your reflections. So it'd probably just end up looking something like this. And again, sort of, if you're using VR and stuff like that, you're not going to be looking directly down that often. And it's still not too jarring, really, to see it. So yeah, that's the kind of using that depth-based material function to get rid of that specular. You can get rid of the waves. You can change the color. You can do whatever you want based on this sort of depth fade. So yeah. Help me 3D. What's that, my dude? It's a good name. Good name. Good place to be with that name. But yeah, that's the only thing I'm going to show this week. I'm going to show more techniques every week, really, for sort of common problems that you might find with 360 renders. Let me know if there's anything you want me to cover. If you're playing with the owl tools and you've run into anything that you might want a bit of a fix, a bit of a workaround for. See if there's any settings you might need to change. Do let me know. And then also just general Unreal Engine stuff or general 360 rendering stuff. This is the place to talk about it, really. Don't know what I'm going to cover next time. I do have a big list of things that could be useful to cover. If anyone's got anything they want to talk about, feel free to jump in. But let me see tutorials wise what we got here. I'm working on sort of the docs for this camera and at the same time kind of making scripts for tutorials. So bloom can cause problems. Anti-aliasing can be useful to know about. Fog is an interesting one. Fog can perform pretty well, really, but there's certain points where a combination of the global illumination and the fog can cause seams. Generally, kind of screen space calculations are going to cause seams. The directional light in your scene you might want to fix. Particles we went over last week. It's actually a really easy fix. Water and reflections we just went over. I'm also going to go into color grading workflows, how you might want to use the ACES workflow or use nice raw footage or the equivalent of Unreal, raw footage in a camera. Unreal can also send out this nice high dynamic range footage. It's got all your data, so you can kind of color edit a lot more, do a lot more color grading and stuff in post. And then sending out EXRs as well can be really useful for having lots of layers in one single image. It's a very cool format, EXR. So we'll go over that. That could be really cool. We could jump into DaVinci a little bit. I'm kind of only just getting started with DaVinci, but it seems really, really useful. Really happy to be jumping away from Adobe as much as possible. It's just been not even functioning as a program. Had this really stupid cache problem recently where I have to manually clear my cache every 5 minutes. So yeah, we'll go into color grading and stuff. And then also path tracer. That's a biggie. That's just a big discussion, really. Because path tracer, I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with it, really. I think overall path tracer I can get just as good images without path tracer, and with Lumen and all of the deferred rendering stuff that's going on under the hood of Unreal, it's really just putting together a really beautiful image in real time anyway. Some people think path tracer can make things look a bit less game-like. I'm kind of personally on the side of it's the content that drives it rather than the rendering method. How painterly you're being with your materials, how your lighting's looking. So I don't use path tracer so much, but we're gonna look into it for sure. And cool. Have you had any issues with anti-aliasing on LED walls? Would this be kind of if you're filming it, and the kind of flickering that you might see, like it could be the kind of frame rate matching that can happen there? Or are we talking about anti-aliasing of geometry looking funny on LED walls? Like if we went down to like, if I don't have DLSS, oh, looks like I do have DLSS on here because it's kind of upscaling the image, but um, I guess you can kind of see it there before I enter it. Like this kind of anti-aliasing or no anti-aliasing. I guess this is anti-aliasing it, but just not very well. Thin objects, usually foliage, interesting. So is it looking good in viewport and then only looking bad on the LED wall? Because if so, that's probably the pixel mapping and getting the pixel density perfect. Yeah, so it might be that you need to perfectly match the amount of pixels that you're sending out. Like say you're sending out a 1920 by 1080 image, you need to have that exact amount of pixels. If it's not pixel for pixel, you might see this thing that kind of looks like anti-aliasing. If I'm understanding the problem right, that's definitely something I've run into before. So it's getting that like bang on exact pixel for LED match, you know. So say you've got one LED wall and it's got, for example, 2,000 LEDs on it. That's not a lot, is it? You would be able to do a 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000 or 1,000 by 500 image out to it. It's actually, yeah. It's actually I found it quite funny the first time jumping onto LEDs how the actual image that you send out isn't necessarily that high res, you know, like it's limited by the amount of LEDs you got. So first time I was working with had a whole cave floor, back and left and right, and the whole image that we're sending out for that was only 1920 by 1080, but it's still looking really, really good. Yeah, it's surprising how low res you can send out, and it still looks really good actually. Using the Megascans trees. I think if it looks good in the viewport, then you know you're on the right track, and then it's just about how it's going out to the LED screen and whether it's matched perfectly, pixel for pixel. You generally have these standalone programs for actually sending out the final video or whatever. If it's looking good in viewport, it's definitely about the output there, how that's going out. Getting that resolution bang on. But then again, if it's not looking good in viewport, it's gonna be something to do with LODs, nanite or something, making your meshes smaller as you're really far away. Like, you know, bringing the LOD of it down. Again, you could kind of do a focus pull. Again, using a depth-based thing, you could make sure the objects that are really far away are kind of out of focus. If that suits your shot, then that could you know, that could smooth over any far away object. But yeah, thanks for the question. cool to discuss this stuff. I've only worked with one or two LED screens, and well, like directly actually being in front of it. I had to make a kind of real-time 360, taking in 360 videos and then mapping it to the LED screen with real-time tweaks and changes. I actually ended up just making a system where you literally skew the sphere. Like, say you're inside a big sphere, you can actually just skew it based off of like scroll wheel or controls on begin play. And what that meant is that you can, it's really not a science, but what it meant is you can really get a feel for what your skewing and mapping might look like, and you can then control, even if you got a video in front of you, you can control whether it's like looking left or right or up or down after begin play on the simulation. That's quite fun. I don't know how. I guess that's not too mad for pixel mapping because it's just based on the final output image. But it was the fact that it was taking in video that was adding some complexity. But that was quite fun. Cool, so just looking at the kind of scripts, the tutorials we got here, I reckon we should look at common directional light problems and kind of global illumination problems, because this one was a bit of a kind of fix, like a VFX trick, but the kind of more global illumination and directional light problems are a bit more like actually just settings that you can tweak. Obviously, there's so many different settings sitting on top of each other, talking to each other in Unreal. So, turning off and on certain things can be really good for general directional light and stuff like that. Working in 360, it's never going to be exactly the same as working just in, one point of view Unreal. A lot of the tricks that Unreal uses are screen space based, and we've got to think a bit outside the box for 360 stuff. But there are some moments when just tweaking some settings can actually be really, really helpful. So yeah, it's a lot of useful settings that I'll go over next week for directional light stuff. Again, let me know if you want to jump in and talk about anything. We sometimes have people in here showing techniques that they've come up with. Super open to that. Or feel free to share your screen if you want to run through anything and troubleshoot anything. That's kind of what this session is for. But yeah, I'll be showing general global illumination stuff next time. Thanks for tuning in this time. If no one's got anything they want to tap in with, any updates or anything, do realise Grander Funk I had you muted that time, so in case you were trying to tap in, feel free to now. But yeah, if not, thanks for tuning in to this one, and more tips down the line.